Opening merchant interface. Scanning trade routes. Scanning for cargo destinations within jump range. Cargo shipment available. 3 tons of amber Zoned Comix and 9 tons of Zhodani Language tapes. Destined for Albion Prime. Contacting Jeff Kazmierski of Amber Zoned Comix for more information. Stand by.
We're talking to Jeff Kazmierski, creator of Amber Zoned Comix and the Zhodani Language and Cultural Institute. Welcome back, Jeff.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Let's start off by talking about your history with Traveler and how you became involved in the community.
It all started probably back in about 1981, when I was just discovering role-playing games. I'd been introduced to Dungeons and Dragons and AD&D and Tunnels and Trolls by a high school friend. And I was looking for a science fiction game. And I had tried a couple of times to write my own with mixed results. They were mostly D&D clones with a Star Wars flavor. And then I read about Traveler, I think in Games Magazine back then. Went looking for it at local bookstores and comic and hobby shops, and eventually found one in a city about an hour away from my hometown. And it just grabbed me from the start. The fact that I could build my own spaceships and create a stellar empire and just create my own universe was just it was awesome. I wanted to build the Millennium Falcon. I wanted to build an Imperial Star Destroyer. Of course, the little black books wouldn't allow that, but 5,000 tons wasn't nearly big enough for a Star Destroyer. But at least you got a good flavor for a feel for building starships.
Sure, you could build X-wings and smaller ships.
you couldn't put a jump drive in them, but you could still build fighters, and yeah. I think I've always liked the small ship aesthetic of Traveler.
And so how did those first Traveler games go for you? And how did that eventually lead to you drawing comics and like a Traveler series?
Our first games were mostly focused on exploration and trade. We played Anik Nova and Shadows and all the classic adventures and had loads of fun with that. But we also loved building ships and doing the mercantile stuff. Didn't relate too much to the mercenary activity, mostly because what do a bunch of 15-year-olds know about life in the army, right?
Right.
But we can relate to scouts. We can kind of relate to the merchants, and that's what we wanted to do. Because Han Solo and all that. And the art in the books was incredibly accessible. You can, for high school kids, you could look at it and think, oh wow, that's what a major game company is using for illustration. I can do that too. And it took me about another 30 years before 20 or 30 years before I actually started doing more illustration, specifically based on Traveler. But when I started up Amber Zone, that was the aesthetic that I wanted to recapture. Those early line drawing, sketchy, sort of humorous. We all remember the shipboard fire extinguisher with the hammer next to the porthole in case of fire break glass.
Right.
That's the sort of aesthetic that I wanted to capture, and I think I succeeded.
Yes, the Amber Zone comics have gained a lot of attention and are pretty popular. They always get likes and stuff when I see them around in social media, and I always appreciate them. There's some funny ones you did that were like if travelers met the Lord of the Rings, or if these different mashups.
One does not simply walk into Mordor. Here, take my air raft.
Right. Yeah, there's some funny stuff on there, and also just some good adventures and little vignettes that you set up. And how do you come up with those, or what inspired you to just make a comic just about Traveler? I mean, were you Did you have a big pile of stuff that you had just doodled, and then you were like, "Hey, I could put that into a book," or did it start the other way around, where you thought, "Oh, maybe I should make a calendar, or a booklet, or something of my traveler drawings," or how did that actually come about?
I like to call myself an accidental storyteller. The first real story that I started to tell with the comics originated with a simple 4-panel white on black comic strip with some aliens, a couple of aliens having a romantic picnic under the stars and watching a shooting star go overhead, and then the final panel is a ship crashing on their planet, and that became the genesis of a story that took me through most of the next year. And once you start actually doing storytelling, it's kind of hard to go back to the single panel and Medias Race sort of one shots. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I still do it occasionally, but my main focus has been expanding on the adventures of the crew of the
Mm-hmm.
ship.
Yeah, that single panel or short form storytelling is difficult to do. Uh, your work is sometimes reminded me of Spy versus Spy from back in the day,
I
and
try.
as far as like trying to tell, like you said, oh, look at the beautiful shooting star. Oh, it's actually a crashing ship, or
Yeah.
that kind of thing. I always like those kinds of jokes and like turnabouts, and I think you pull those off pretty well.
Thank you.
Can you so tell us a bit about your approach to designing and illustrating your comics, especially for sci-fi settings like for Traveler? How do you come up with like ideas for what aliens and plants and things should look like?
As far as aliens go, there's the science fiction. The science fiction community is a treasure trove of opportunities, and inspiration to look at. Sometimes I just do a search on, if I need to want to come up with a new alien, I'll do a search online or for aliens, or sometimes they just come to me, and I don't even know what their what their characteristics are, what they can do. Like when the aliens in that first contact script, I had no idea who they were, or what their species was, or what abilities they had, or they were just funny aliens with big eyes. For like creatures and plants, screenshots from video games help. My dad was a botanist, so we used to go on nature hikes all the time, and he'd point out all kinds of unusual life forms that other people would just overlook. And then, of course, for alien creatures, you can't go wrong by looking at Pokemon. There's like 1,000. There's like 1,000 of them. If you mix and match a couple, no one's going. First of all, everyone's going to notice. No one's going to care,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone's going to be amused.
Right. Yeah. They're already a mishmash of things. So, I mean,
That's
it's
right.
even worse. I mean, like a turtle and a garlic or something. And what
Exactly.
is that?
Yeah. What the heck is that?
Yeah. So how do you go from like blank page to finish in a broad sense to finish comic? How do you go from like, do you have an idea, or do you just sit down and you look at the paper and then you come up with an idea and then you just flesh it out until you think it's done?
A little of column A, a little of column B.
I see.
Sometimes the idea comes to me. If it's a single panel, it usually just I see a scene in my head, and then I start sketching it out, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it needs several tries to get it right on the page. For longer format storytelling, I have to think in terms of what came before and what's going to come next. Like with the latest one that I'm doing, Homecoming or Return to Zhodani, sometimes the pages are interludes. This is especially when the crew's in jump space. It's always fun to explore what people do in jump space, because we got 7 days of downtime.
Right.
What are you going to do with your time? Shoot and play a lot of pool, play cards, and as it happens, the crew plays Traveler on at least one of those days.
That's so meta.
But for longer format storytelling, you have to think in terms of what came before and what comes next, and you have to create create hopefully a logical flow,
like a continuity from.
You have to create some kind of continuity between event A and event C, and
Right.
that's in many ways more challenging than coming up with a single panel strip.
It's like you're tweening it from the first, scene to the last scene. You're like, what comes in between here, and at what point, or do we want to peek into what's happening? Right. I mean, it's like,
right.
What's the most interesting?
You have to break that page down, because I work one page at a time. I have to break that page down into how many panels am I going to need to tell this chapter of the story, and how do I get those from in a logical or in some kind of continuity from event A from event A to the final, and then leading into the next, and then making sure that leads into the next chapter of the story.
So can you share a memorable experience or moment you've had while working on your projects or playing Traveler? Maybe a piece of fan mail that struck you, or
I gotta say, the most memorable experiences that I've had recently have been publishing books for the first time on my own, finally having a volume of work and an access to an outlet where I could sell it, and being able to take that creation and put it out there in the universe for people to enjoy, people to purchase and enjoy, and knowing that it's now the part of the Traveler community at large. Getting beginning Zdetl out there was just the thrill of a lifetime. I gotta say, and it's thrilling, and it's kind of scary, because now it's out there and people are using it, and they're going to take it in directions that I can't predict. I hope, because that's the purpose of a language.
right?
That accomplishment was something that I've hoped for about the past 40 years as a gamer.
Wow. Well, congratulations. It is an accomplishment.
It's a labor of love.
Mm-hmm. So how do you stay motivated and inspired to keep creating new content for Traveler, or for the Traveler community at large?
I keep reading. I keep reading. I stay active in the community. I pay attention to the current trends, and and every now and then it pays to take a break, draw something, work on something else for a while, and do something not directly Traveler related, because you got to recharge. There's just so much info, so much lore out there that it's almost impossible to keep up with all of it. And the good thing is there's more being written every day.
Yeah, the Traveler wiki is ginormous and contains so much information, and there's a lot of fan created stuff out there in the world. I'm a fan creator. You're a fan creator. What role do you see fan created content playing in the future of the Traveler RPG community and the industry as a whole?
I would say that it's not an exaggeration to say that it's critical to the survival. Fan created content was what revitalized AD&D, and it is what is keeping Traveler going. The industry leaders, they create the quote unquote canon material, but it's the fans that really give life to the entire hobby.
It's a good point. Traveler map, fan created.
Yep. Traveler wiki, fan created. The Zhodani base, fan created. There's it's not an exaggeration to say that there's more fan created content out there than there is official content.
I think I would agree with that. Yes, that's definitely true. So you spent a significant amount of time developing the Zhodani language under your Zhodani Language and Cultural Institute. What sparked your interest in the Zhodani race, and how did you get the idea for creating their language?
Been interested in the Zhodani since I bought the I forget which adventure it is. I think it's number 6, Expedition to Zhodani, where they were really I think they were first introduced there in any kind of depth. It always fascinated me what was the catalyst. Why would a culture like this develop? Because it's not like it's not like an entire society woke up one day and said, "Hey, let's develop psionics and reorder our entire society around it." There had to be a reason. So my explorations into Zhodani culture was the result of me wanting to tell a story about a Zhodani expatriate character trapped in the Third Imperium, and how she related to this, and how she overcomes culture shock and a variety of other factors to become who she is now. In order to do that, I decided I had to investigate the language, and like all the other languages in Traveler, 40 years ago, we were handed a system for creating words and expanding on that aspect of culture, but very little was actually done with it in the interim period. Searching online and finding nothing or very little, except for the few hundred words that had already been created, I decided that it was time somebody did. And thus the Zhodani Language Institute was born.
How did you go about coming up with a language? I mean, do you speak other languages? What kinds of skills did you bring to bear on creating the Zhodani language?
Just a general fascination with language in general. I'm not a linguist. I have 4 years of high school German and a few semesters of college German under my belt, and I lived in Japan and Korea and Saudi Arabia, and I've always made a point of trying to learn a little bit of the native language of the countries that I've lived in. So yeah, I learned I taught myself to read, write, and speak a little bit. Read and write Korean and speak a little bit of it, and I learned to read Arabic while I was in Saudi Arabia. I speak a few words of it. I know some Japanese. I can't read Japanese. I can't read hiragana, katakana, or any of those. But my oldest daughter is teaching herself how to do that. More power to her. And just a general fascination with languages that I blame on Tolkien. But yeah, I went full Tolkien so I could tell a story about one character.
So, how did you? Can you share some interesting or unique aspects of the Zhodani language and culture that fans of Traveler might find interesting?
There are several. First, it is object oriented. We call it an object oriented language, meaning that in a sentence, the object comes before the verb, and then the subject of the sentence is the last item in the sentence. This means that when you're translating anything into Zdetl, you have to flip the sentence structure sometimes to get it right before you go about the translation. It is also an agglutinative language, meaning that a single word can express a very complex subject.
Example?
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up. Let's see here. There is a fine example in the Traveler Wiki that was recently added. Here we have the sentence, "I hate the superior person who hates my stealth scout." Now, it's kind of an eccentric sentence to use as an example, but it's a good illustration. That's the English form. The next one is, "The superior person hating my stealth scout, I hate." Now we have put the object, the superior person, in the front of the sentence. Finally, next in object verb sentence order, it is the "my scout hating superior person I hate." We're still in English at this point. Now we're applying Zdetl rules to the English form. Scout my hate, participle, superior person hate I. Object, verb, subject. This becomes translated into Zdetl. Stebnik Ransenj Vlasteber Ransik. 4 words to express what took nearly 10 in English.
I see. That's a great example.
And it's very challenging. It makes translation quite challenging because you can't, even though you can do this, you don't, strictly speaking, have to. You can translate it into a simpler, more English structured phraseology. But that would, I imagine, mark you as a non-native speaker.
Here's a question about Zhodani. Being a psychic race, what need do they have for languages?
Not everyone is telepathic. The proles, for example, Jantad, are not trained in telepathy. Only those with significant ability are trained, are identified and elevated to the ranks of nobility within their their class system. Everyone else, commoners, do not actively use telepathy. Now, nobles will happily scan and communicate telepathically with everybody, but commoners do not. The other reason is telepathic signals don't interact well with machines, so you still need a written language, a written display on your computer screens.
Some things to consider. Yeah, you can't telepathically make a phone call.
No, you can't.
Yes, maybe a short one, very short distance.
If you know, if the person is within range of your telepathy, you would, but then you wouldn't need the phone.
Right. So what are your near-term plans for Zoned Comix and the Zhodani Language Institute? Are there any upcoming releases or events we should look forward to? For the comics, I'm planning on continuing the story of my Zhodani expatriate, as she, as the crew, the now retired crew of the Blue Falcon, makes their way across the Third Imperium toward the vast unknown that is the Zhodani consulate. One does not simply walk into Mordor. It takes several jumps, and I'm also I'm sure I'll add that I'm adding this to my list of things to do. I'm going to release a line of T-shirts and coffee mugs and other swag based on the T-shirts that Crash, my main character and pilot, has been seen wearing in the strips. And as far as the Institute goes, I'm currently working on a huge project called the Zdetl Adventures, which is a standalone game system inspired by Traveler, inspired by Zhodani history,
Traveler players will recognize many of the mechanics, and it is set entirely on Zdetl during the Second Dark Age, after their first forays into space, into their moon Chaco, resulted in a global outbreak of a ancient bioweapon that almost left their race extinct. The players will play the survivors of the cataclysm, eking out an existence and trying to survive, and maybe even occasionally bringing civilization to a world gone mad. Psionics plays a role in it, but because psionics is not well developed at the time of the Second Dark Age, it is primitive at best. It's been a lot of fun developing it. It actually grew out of a conversation that I had with another ZLI member, where I posed the question. We were discussing the arts and literature, and I posed the question: do the Zhodani have anything approximating samurai folklore or spaghetti westerns? And it turns out, yeah, they kind of do.
All right, so you're going to develop that out, and best of luck on that project. That sounds like an interesting and fun project. In the long term, how do you envision the future of your projects and their impact on the Traveler community? Are you already mentioned that you're hoping folks will take the beginnings of Zdetl and develop that language out? What are your overall hopes for the future of those, of Amber Zoned Comix plus the ZLI?
Well, I hope I will continue running both Amber Zoned and the ZLI probably until the universe decides it's done with me. And I hope Traveler is still around by then, and I hope somebody else, some other enthusiast takes it over. For the community at large, though, I hope somebody follows my lead and the lead of people like Robert Eagleston and other language enthusiasts, and picks up some of the other languages that haven't been developed. Bob Eagleston developed Zhodani several years ago, and he has quite a very good offering out there, with extensive glossary and grammar. What it needs is a well-developed primer, so that people can pick it up and learn quickly. Now, Zhodani has its own quirks. It's a tonal language which presents like Chinese, which presents its own special set of challenges, but it's not impossible. Yeah, I'm hoping that somebody picks up one of the Vargar dialects and runs with it. And I know this is a long shot, but maybe some brave soul or team of enthusiasts can pick up Troch, the Aslan language, and turn it into something that you can at least insult one of the space kitties with.
Cool. All right, those are great hopes for the future. Let's talk a little bit about let's come back to the present day. Let's talk about some current events. So, with the rise of virtual tabletop platforms, how do you see this trend affecting the Traveler experience and your projects? Do you any plans for making your language books available for VTT, or maybe Zhodani adventures available on VTT, or is it VTT doesn't affect you?
I haven't used it that much. I've experimented a little bit with Roll20, but I haven't really done any serious gaming with it. But yeah, absolutely. Once the Zod class adventures gets more fully formed, I do plan on doing extensive playtesting via Roll20. Most of the Institute members are scattered across the globe, so that's the only way we're going to do it. Yeah, virtual tabletop is the way it is that a lot of us are going to connect. It's increasingly hard to find local groups, at least for me, that can meet consistently. And Roll20 and virtual tabletop is just the way to go. And it brings together different. It brings different perspectives together too.
Yes. Yeah. I've learned a lot of stuff about other cultures just by playing with people all around the world. So it's super interesting to me. Let's talk a little bit about the rise of AI. There's been a lot of hubbub about AI recently in art and content, and also as well as like within the game, like could you play an AI in Traveler, and what would that be like? And would you have a body, or would you live in the computer? And how much rain might you have? Do you have any thoughts on any of those AI topics?
Oh, I have many. Yeah, I've seen people using AI to create quick illustrations of characters. It's and it's good for I find it useful for like rapid prototyping of environments and scenes. I mostly use it to generate quick reference photos that I can use to draw to do my own human created art from. It's mostly because when I try to get like something like Midjourney to create specific characters in a specific scene, it always gets something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's never how I envision it. Now, sometimes it adds elements that I find useful, but mostly I just end up using it as a reference point.
I saw a funny meme about AI art, and it was like a salmon in the river, and it was like fillets of salmon jumping up the stream and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it adds extra. Even Midjourney version 5 still adds extra arms and fingers and stuff in odd locations. It's useful, but not a replacement yet. And I don't think it really ever will replace human artists. I hope we don't get to that point, because that will be to me that'll be a very sad day. I'm glad that it exists because there are I've seen a lot of people out there users out there who are using it who have mobility issues or don't have the time or ability or skill to do human created art. Those people, it can be a powerful tool for storytelling. I'm glad it's out there for them.
One thing I've noticed is AI in the hands of regular people, in the average Joe, produces good results, but AI in the hands of an artist produces fantastic results.
Oh yeah, if you really know how to phrase the prompts properly, you can produce some amazing stuff, and people do.
There's recently been a lot of discussion about around the Wizards of the Coast open gaming license fiasco. Do you have any thoughts on that situation? Were you affected by it? And how do you think it might impact the Traveler RPG community?
I'm following it closely. It didn't really impact me that much, except development, except for in terms of development of the Zdetl book. I did kind of have to. I have been watching and waiting to see how that plays out before I go releasing it to the public. Unfortunately, that's months away from being ready for beta testing. By then I think most of the
OpenGL stuff will be resolved by then.
I think it will be. And I've heard good things coming out of the rest of the game development community. I've heard Mongoose is coming up with their own open gaming license specific to Traveler, and of course there's Pathfinder and Starfinder that they have their own version of it too.
It'd be best to cut out the unstable middleman, you know.
Yes, and it was amazing to see how quickly the community and how quickly other major companies the industry rallied around the community, and just came together and said, no, we're not having this.
Right. Yep. People came out and started canceling their D&D subscriptions, and yeah, they got hit in the pocketbook pretty hard, and then they backpedaled.
Yep. But the damage was already done.
Yep. Yep. I wonder how that's going to affect the D&D movie. I think they pushed it back to try to let all this stuff die down.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Fortunately, we already have the perfect D&D movie. It's called The Princess Bride.
Yes.
Using that word.
Why are you wearing a mask? Well, everyone will be wearing one. It's all the rage.
They're quite comfortable. I think everyone will be wearing them in the future.
So, how do you stay up to date with current events and trends in the RPG industry to make sure that your projects stay relevant?
I read a lot. I follow the forums.
Pretty active on social media.
I'd like to say that I pay attention to the news, but honestly, to the RPG news. But honestly, if I hadn't been on the in the Traveler forum so much as I am, I probably wouldn't have even been aware of the fiasco.
What advice would you give to somebody looking to create their own content for Traveler, or who wants to join the Traveler community?
I would say start small and build, and read everything that you possibly can. It is the most fully realized and complete science fiction universe out there, and that's because it's got some 47 years of lore that have been developed for it, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. So start small, start with something that interests you, and then just keep reading and stay curious about it. And join the fan forums, ask the questions. Eventually you'll run into someone, you'll run into someone like me who just loves delving into the prehistory and esoteric stuff. You'll find out that the community is very helpful. You'll never run out of cool stuff to investigate once you start playing Traveler.
That's good advice. Are there some other aspects of the Traveler universe that you'd like to explore in the future, either through Zoned Comix or with the Zhodani Language Institute?
Oh yeah, definitely. I just mentioned I think I just mentioned the history. Traveler has an internal game history that stretches back 300,000 years, but the Third Imperium only covers not even 1% of that. It's an awesome setting, but it's not all there is. So I would like to go and examine what life might have been like during Bronze Age Zdetl, during the Vipchakalashtia Empire. I would love to delve into Volani history, especially or Volani prehistory, the 20,000 year period while the Mecha and Kaiju were still rampaging across the land and making life even more difficult than it already was for the people that would eventually become the Volani. I'd like to look at the late 21st century of Terran history and look at first contact between the Zirasirta and the expanding Terran explorers. This is all really cool stuff.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. Like where are the other races at this point in history comparatively?
Right. Yeah. Both the Volani and the Zhodani were exploring space while we were still using bronze-tipped spears. That's just crazy to think about. But they had different environmental, cultural, and evolutionary pressures on them.
Can you share with us your favorite aspect or element of Traveler that keeps you passionate about your projects?
It varies. Right now, it's the lore, it's the history. Yeah, I just love digging into that stuff and exploring it, because it's uncharted space, as it were. It's written about, but not, but only in terms of, okay, here's the timeline of the charted space universe. Yeah, I love digging into the prehistory of it. And then there's psionics, and of course the starships.
So, Jeff, where can people find your products? And now also, how can people follow you and learn more about your projects?
On Facebook, you can find me at Amber Zoned. You can also look up the Zhodani Language and Cultural Institute on Facebook, and that's where you can learn more about the lovable weirdos to Spinward of the Third Imperium. My books are available on lulu.com, and if you search for either my name or Amber Zoned or Zhodani, you will find them, or Zdetl, you will find them.
We'll put links in the description to these to the show notes so people can find that stuff. Well, hey Jeff, we've come to the end of our interview.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us again. I'm your host, Frank Siccardi, known as CyborgPrime on the internets. I've been here sitting enjoying a conversation with Jeff Kazmierski from Zoned Comix and the mastermind behind the Zhodani Language Institute. Thank you so much again, Jeff, and to the folks out there listening, happy traveling.